since he usually gets on a few minutes earlier. Okay, I'm going to start with our learning sponsors, and then we'll pick up the Gemara. We'll do what we can today. Okay, Suanan Gerlich in memory of Malka Perlman and Philip Mann, Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Beryl ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Yosef Meir ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Chenya Rivka Perl Razna Bas Arav Tzvi Hirsch, and the memory of family murdered in the Holocaust. Arav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Aviya bas Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bas Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bas Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch. Shall assure her children and grandchildren in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Yisrael ben Arav Akiva, Marsha Federbush and family, in memory of her husband, Dr. Uriel Paul Federbush, Uriel Pinchas ben Arav Shimon, Sharon and Fred Lisker, their family and many friends, in memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman, Edelbus Yaakov, Leslie and Gail Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Sedell, Irving and Pearl Kaplan, friends of Avi Gitler, Avram Meir ben Shimon, and Martha Gitler, Chana Bas Yeshaya, friends of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova bat Yisrael Dov, friends of Malka Levi, Malka bat Yosef, friends of Joe Wolf, Yosef ben Chaim. A month of learning by Mel and Haran Haller in memory of his brother Yaakov ben Abraham, Jill and Perry Meltzer in memory of his father David ben Fishel Halevi and her mother Bela bas Abraham, Dov Budlander in memory of his wife Ruthel bas Yehuda Tzvi. Also a month of learning by Stephanie and Fred Mortman in memory for Aruf for Shlema of her daughter Mazal bat Sarah Milka. Shabbos, we had a day of learning plus Torah fun by Shirley and Marvin Weinstein in memory of her late husband, Yaakov ben Levi. Today, we have a day of learning plus Torah fun by Arlene and Norman Glick in memory of her mother, Rachel bas Yosef. And that is it for today. May Shemas have an aliyah, crank of a fear about the Yeshua Shema Tliyah, Mechol b'nei Israel, a good gebench. Yeah. Okay.
Amen.
The Gemara today really basically continues this, I guess I would call it the side issue on the book of Daniel. Okay. And goes through a lot of that. So we'll just try to go through as much as we can before we get back then into the Gemara, regular topic of the Gemara. Okay, if we go back to the very bottom, okay, since it said verses with Daniel, okay, that's the bottom really of 76b. Mai va'ani bati bidvarecha. What does it mean when it said, the angel said to Daniel, Hainu dichtiv v'shivim ish miziknei Yisrael. V'ya'azniyahu ben Shaphat omed b'tocham omdim lifnehem v'ish miktarto b'yado v'atar anan hektot Allah v'yishlach v'avnit yad v'yikachiv v'tzitzit roshi v'tzisaoti ruach Ben haaretz, ben hashemayim, v'taveoti Yerushalayma, v'marot Elohim el petach shar hapnimit haponet tzfona. Okay, that whole section. Okay, again, citing Cheskel. Okay, come to do your word from Daniel, and then they make the parallel to Yecheskel. There stood before me 70 men of the elders of the house of Israel and Yejaniah, son of Shaphan, standing in the midst of them, each man with his censer in his hand. A thick cloud of incense went up. Okay, in the form of a hand went forth. I was taken by the lock of my head, and a spirit lifted me up between the earth and the heavens, and brought me in the visions of Hashem, Jerusalem, to the door of the gate of the inner court that faces northward. Right? And then we continue. It went on then. There's Zev, there's Steve. Okay. Sham moshav semo hakin'ah hamakneh v'yovei oti el chatzar beit Hashem hapnimit v'hinei petach heichal Hashem bein ha'olam u'bein hamizbeach כ-25 איש אחריהם אל היכל השם, פניהם קדמה והמה משתחווים קדמה לשמש. Okay, again, citing the example from Yechezkel, brought him to the place of jealousy, brought me into the inner court of Hashem's house, the opening of the entrance hall. By the sanctuary, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men with their backs toward the temple and their faces toward the east. They were worshiping the sun. Since it said they were backs, right? Their face were towards the east. Okay, I don't know if it's understood that their backs were towards the Hechal. What does that imply? Okay. Elamat Talmud lo ma'achreihem el Heichal Hashem melamed shahayu por'in atzman v'hayu matrizin klapei mata. Okay, they were uncovering themselves and defecating towards the Heichal. Okay, now, why is that? Quickly, just the point of what we need to remember is that that was one of the forms of idol worship. Okay, and therefore, that's what they were doing. So the Gemara picks up, keeping that thought in mind. And Hashem says to the angel Michael, okay, Michael, Sarcha umatcha, your nation is sinning. Right? Again, coming back to Daniel. Amar lefanav, he says to him, Ribono shel olam, master of the universe. Dayo letovim shebahem, okay, is that enough, good enough for those good people? Amarlo, he said to them, Ani soref otam levetovim shebahem. And asks, he said, I will burn them and the good among them, because the good people did not rebuke the evil ones. Miyad, okay, immediately, says the pasuk, Vayomer leish lavush abadim, Vayomer bo el benot legalgal, el tachat lakruv umalei chafanecha kachle eish mibenot lakruvim uzrok al ha'ir. Okay, he tells him to the person clothed in linen, and according to most commentaries, that person is the angel Gabriel, who's supposed to be the angel of righteous justice. Okay, to carry out Hashem's acts, but at the same time, he was also the defender of the Jewish people. And so we keep that aspect in mind. Okay, he was told to gather up the charcoals, so to speak, that was there, okay, and use that to burn the city. Okay, vayavo le'enat, right? Okay, so what happens? Miyad vayishlach hakruv et yad mibenot lakruvim el ha'esh asher benot hakruvim. Vaysav el chafnei levush habadim vayikach v'yetzei. Okay, the angel stretched out his hand from among the kruvim on the aron to take the fire that was there, right, on the right, and took it and put it into the hands of Gabriel, and he went out. Right, we're going back and forth here from Yechezkel and Daniel. Now, Amar Rav Chana Bar Vizna Amar Rabbi Shimon Chasida, in the name of Rabbi Shimon Chasida, Imalei lo nitztanagu kechalim miyado shel kruv v'yado shel Gabriel, were it not for the fact that these charcoals, these embers, cooled in the time of passing from the hand of the angel to the hand of Gabriel, lo nishtayru misunehem shel Yisrael sarid upalit. There would not have been left any remnant of the Jewish people. Okay? Uktiv, and then the Gemara tells us it was also written, V'hinei ha'ish lavush abadim, asher hakeset b'matnav meshiv davar lemor. Okay, so again, the man clothed in linen, and he had this in his hand, this container of the embers, right? And he said, what happened? The Valimor Asiti Kashet Sivitani. I did what you commanded. But in essence, no, he did not burn the city. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yochanan, Ba'ota Sha'ah, Hotziu LeGavriel Me'acharei HaPargod. Okay, what happened? They threw the angel Gabriel out from the assembly of the angels behind the partition, behind the, so to speak, a separate wall by which the angels would gather, the curtain, they would gather to praise Hashem while he sat on his divine throne. Okay? What happens? Right? And it said, Umachyuhu shitin pulse denora. And they struck him with 60 blows of fire. Okay? They punished him. Amarule. And they said to him, right? E lo avadet. Lo avadet. If you didn't do it, you didn't do it. E avadet. And if you did it, in other words, if you destroyed, amai lo avadet. Why didn't you, if you did do it, then why didn't you simply report it according to the way you were commanded? Va'od, okay, and furthermore, in other words, why did he deviate from what he was commanded to do? Davadet litlach, okay, and if you already did it, ein meshivin al hakalkala, you don't give a report describing the destruction. You simply say, I carried out my assignment, so to speak. Now, what happened? I tuha, right, or I tu ledubiel surah de parsai. They brought then Dubiel, who was the, I guess, the ministering angel, the chief. Remember, each country, each nation had their own sar, their own ministering angel. He was the one of the Persians. Va'okme b'charike, and they put him in the location of where Gabriel had stood, okay, where his place was. V'shimesh esrim ve'achad yom, and he served there for 21 days. Hainu dichtiv, that's why it's written in a pasuk. V'sar malchut paras omed lenegdi esrim ve'achad yom, v'hinei Michael, achad hasarim harishonim, ba la'azreni, va'ani notarti sham etzu malchei paras. Again, citing an example from the book of Daniel, okay, the prince of Persia stood opposite me for 21 days, but lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there besides the king of Persia. So what happens? Yahavu le esrin v'chad malchei, okay, and said that they brought, that's the aspect of 21 kings, uparvata the Mashi, right? And they ruled one of the smaller areas, the seaport of Mashli. Okay. Now, continuing with this whole episode, Amar, it says, Kativu Leili Israel Ba'arkarga. Okay, right. In other words, what did they declare? That the right that the Jewish people have to pay a poll tax. Okay, Katavu Le, they wrote, Kativu Li Rabbanan Ba'akarga, says the Gemara. They wrote it, and were the rabbis really required, exclamation mark, to pay a poll tax? Why? Usually they were exempt from such a thing. Katavu Le Ba'idana di Ba'ul V'michatam Amad Gavriel Me'acharei HaPargud. But at the time that they wanted to sign the document, what happened? Gabriel stood from behind the curtain. Va'amar, he said, Shav lachem mashkimei, kum me'achrei shevet ochle lechem ha'atzavim, ken yitem ledido shena. It's vain for you, those who rise up early, namely the other angels, or who stay up late. Okay, in other words, they get up early to praise Hashem, they stay late to praise Hashem. Okay, but what happens? Okay, they allow them to eat the bread of sorrow, for he gave his beloved sleep. Ma ken yitem leyedido shena. What does it mean, giving them sleep? Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, he says, Elu nishotein shel tamidei chachamim, shemenadrot shena ba'olam hazeh, v'zochot la'olam haba. These are the wives of the sages who stay up late waiting for their husbands to come home from learning Torah. And therefore they are entitled to the sleep in the world to come. Okay? V'lo hishkichu alav. But the other angels didn't pay attention to him. Right? They didn't listen to him. Amar lefanim. So Gabriel still shows his defense of the Jewish people. Ribono shel olam, master of the universe. Im hiyu kol chachmei umot ha'olam b'kaf moznehem. If all of the sages of the Gentiles were on one side of a scale, v'Daniel ish chamudot b'kaf shniyah, and Daniel, the man who's beloved, was on the other side of the scale, lo nimtza machriya et kulam, wouldn't we find that he would, so to speak, outweigh them? Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, says the Holy One. Mi hu zeh shemilamed zechut al banai. Who is it that is teaching the merit, so to speak, of my children? Okay. Amru alav ribono shel olam Gabriel, master of the universe. It's Gabriel. Okay, the righteous judge, but also the defender of the Jewish people. Amar lehem yavo, let him come. It says, Shneamar va'ani bati b'dvarecha, and I come due to your words. Amar leho le'ol, and they said to him, let him come up. Ayiluhu, and they brought him up. Ata ashkechei ledubiel, dinakat le'igarte bidei. Now comes Dubiel, and we find that he had this document declaring a poll tax on the Jewish people on their hand, in his hand. By lemir mamine. Okay, Gabriel wanted to take it from him. So what did Dubiel do? He swallowed it. Bala'a. Ikeda Amri, and others say Michtav Hava Kativa, that it was written. Michatam Lo Have Chatma, but it wasn't signed. Ikeda Amri, and there are those who say Ach Michatam Nami Hava Chatma, but that it was signed. Kedabal E Machik Le Mine. But when he swallowed it, as a result, the signatures got erased. Hainu de b'malchuta de Paris, ika de yahiv karga, ve'ika de lo yahiv karga. That's why, says the Gemara, that in the kingdom of Persia, there were those upon whom there was a tax, and there were those upon whom where there was no tax. Va'ani yotzei v'hinei sar yavan ba, and then Gabriel said, okay, Pasuk says, when I go out, then the ministering angel of Greece will take over. Ave, ave, veleked ashkachve. Gabriel cried out, woe, woe. That should not happen. But again, they did not pay attention to him. So that whole piece now is completed. We now come back to our general material, ve'ibayat ema. And if you want, I would say as follows. What about these other inuyim, these other afflictions? We talked about eating. We talked about drinking. Remember, we said there were others, wearing shoes, for example, bathing, conjugal relations, right? So we're going to see, the Gemara is now going to see what is the proof that shows us that these are also inuyim. Okay? V'ibayat ema. And if you want, I would say rechitza de ikre inui minalan. Okay, if one, I would say where regarding bathing, that it's called an affliction. On what basis? Mehacha. Maybe from the following dichtiv pasuk. Uleviatar kohen amar hamelech anatot lech el sadecha ki ish mavet ata uvayom hazeh lo amitecha ki nasata et aron Hashem lefnei David avi v'chi et anita b'chol asher hit ana avi. Okay, Abiatar the priest, okay, said he was told by the king, go to your property in Anatot and stay there because you would be condemned to death. But today I won't kill you because you carried the ark for my father, King David, and you were with him in all his afflictions. That was the point. K'tiv bei b'David, and it was written with regards to David. Ki amru ha'am ra'ev va'ayef v'tzamei b'midbar. And it says, what was his afflictions? Okay, that with regards to the nation, right? They saw that he was hungry, he was tired, he was thirsty in the desert. Ra'ev milechem, hungry from bread. V'tzamei, and thirsty mimayim, from water. Ayef, weary or tired. Mimai, from what? Lav merechitza, wasn't we say that would be from bathing? V'dilma minilat hasandal. Perhaps that really means he was only weary from all the time out there that he had no footwear, right? Ela amar Rav Yitzchak. But rather Rav Yitzchak says mehacha. Maybe proof for rechitza comes from the following. Mayim karim al nefesh ayefa. Cold water on a weary soul. V'dilma mishtia. Maybe that comes from more regarding drinking. Mikativ b'nefesh ayefa, is written a tired soul. Al nefesh ayefa ktiv. It's written instead on a weary soul. So we go on. That's the next proof. Unilat hasandal minalan. How do we know that not wearing footwear, wearing shoes, is an affliction on Yom Kippur? Tichtiv v'David ole b'ma'aleh hazeitim ole uboche. David went up the mountain of olives, wept as he went, and his head was covered, but he was walking barefoot. Yachef mimai, barefoot, on what basis? Lav mini lat hasandal, wasn't that be then without shoes? Vadilma misusia umartika. Maybe that simply means that he didn't have a horse and a whip. Because a king without a horse and a whip is like a person without shoes. Okay? Lacking in honor, respect. Ela amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, he says. Mahacha, but from this pasuk, lech upitachta hasak me'al matnecha v'na'alcha tachlotz me'al raglecha. Pasuk from Isaiah. Go and loose the sackcloths from your body and remove your shoes from your feet. V'yas kain haloch aron v'yachet. And he went thus on his path, right, naked and barefoot. Yachet mimai, barefoot from what? Lav mini ilat hasandal, isn't it not from wearing shoes? Ve'ema b'mina'alim hamatulaim, maybe it says that he was really wearing patched shoes. De'ilote mahachi, because if you don't say that, arum mamash, would he really have gone naked? Ella rather begadim blu'im, rather that must mean worn clothes, right? Hachanami here too, b'mena'alim hamatulaim. It must mean patched shoes. A scholar was not supposed to go with patched shoes. Ela amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak mehacha. Rather from here. Meni raglech miyachef ugronech mitzimha. Withhold your foot from being barefoot and your throat from thirst. From Jeremiah this time. Mini atzmech min hachet, kadei shelo yavo raglech liyadei chichuf. Prevent yourself from sin so that your feet do not go barefoot. It's part of the pasuk. Mini leshonech midvarim betelim, kadei shelo yavo gronech liyadei tzim'ah. And prevent your tongue from saying idle things so that it doesn't come that your throat will suffer from thirst. Now, new example from the Gemara. Tashmish hamita deikre inui minela. Conjugal relations, how do we know that's an affliction? On what basis? Dichtib im te'aneh et benotai v'im tikach nashim. Again, from Breshit, Laban saying to Yaakov, right, if you afflict my daughters, you shall and take other wives besides my daughters. Okay, going to the next Amud. Im te'aneh. What does it mean if you afflict? Mitashmish, from relations. V'im tikach, and if you take, mitzarot, from additional wives, right? Wives that are what's the word I want? Competitors, okay? Right? From, remember, we'll get to that with Yabama. Ve'ema, and I might say, idi ve'idi mitzarot. Maybe both terms refer to competing wives. Mikativ, im tikach, but is it written if you take? Ve'im tikach, and if you take, it's written. Va'ema, and I might say still, idi ve'idi b'mitzarot, that both refer to competitive wives. Chad on the one, litzarot didei, right? The competitors that they have currently. In other words, Rachel and Leah, right, had the two hand wives, Bilhah and Zilpah. So those could be competing wives, right? V'chad letzarot da'at yamle ma'alma, and the other to competing wives that might come in general. Dumya de im tikach. That's similar again to what we said, if you can take. Mikativ, im tikach, is it written, if you take, ve'im te'aneh, okay, and if you afflict, im te'aneh, it's written, if you afflict, ve'im tikach, and if you take, it's written. So let's go on, right? Amah le Rav Papa, and Rav Papa explained Abai the following. Hatashmish gufa ikre inui. Relations itself can be called an affliction. Dichtiv vayishkav ota v'ya'aneha. Why? Because it says regarding Shechem, right? In Breshit, that he lay with her and he afflicted her. Amar le, and he said to him, Hatam she'ina mibiot achilot. There, that simply means that he had various different forms of relations with her. New piece from our Gemara. New piece back to the, referring back to the Mishnah. Okay? Tanu Rabbanan, says the Breita. Asur lerchotz miktzat gufo kechol gufo. It's prohibited to wash part of the body like the whole body. Ve'im hayam meluchlach betip ubetzoah. But if he were dirty with mud, let's say, or excrement, rochetz kedarko ve'eno choshesh. He washes his whole body and has nothing to be concerned about. Asur lasuch miktzat gufo bechol gufo. He's forbidden to anoint his part of his body like his whole body. Ve'im hayacholeh o shahayalo chatatim berosho. If he were ill or he had some sort of scabs on his head, sach kedarko ve'eno choshesh. He anoints himself as usual and he has no concern. Tana de Be Menashe, and it was taught in the academy of Menashe, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, he says, Medicha isha yada achat b'mayim, a woman can wash one hand in water, v'notenet pat latino, in order to allow her to feed food or bread to the child. Ve'ena chosheshet, and she does not have to be concerned. Amru alav al Shammai hazaken, and once they said the following regarding Shammai the elder, Shelo ratzah laha'achil biyado achat, that he did not want to feed the children, I'm going to say even with one hand, because Ru alav laha'achil b'shtei yadayim, and they made a decree that he should feed his children with two hands. Ma'itama, what was the reasoning? Amar Abaye mishum shivta. Says Abaye, it was because of the demon shivta. Now they understood Meforshim that shivta was really a kind of illness that could occur to children if they were fed food that was not clean. Okay, by people from people whose hands were unclean. Okay, Tanu Rabbanan, a new bright. Ha'olech hakbil pnei aviv o pnei rabo. If one goes to greet on the holiday his teacher, his father, or his teacher, o pnei misha gadol mimenu, or somebody of greater authority, over ad savaro b'mayim, if he has to cross through a lake, a river, okay, and go up to his neck in water, ve'eno choshesh, right? That's not bathing for pleasure, okay, and therefore he doesn't have to worry about it. Ibayalahu, so the students ask, Harav Eitzel Tamid Mai, what about the student going to visit his teacher? Tashma, listen to the following. The Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Rav Khan said as follows: Ana chazite lezeiri de azil legabe Rabbi Chia bar Ashi Talmide. I happened to see that Zeiri went to visit Rabbi Chia bar Ashi, who was his student. Rav Ashi Amar, Rav Ashi explains, Hahu Rav Chia bar Ishi, who de azil legabe de Zeiri Rabbi. No, he says it was Rav Chia bar Ashi who went to visit his teacher Zeiri. Rava Shrala v'nei Abar Yamina lema'avar b'maya l'neturei peren. Rava once permitted the people who were on the one side, the right side of the river, to cross the river in order to watch, protect the fruit, to guard the fruit. Amarle Abai the Rava, and Abai questioned him, Tanya, the Messiah Lach. And there's a brighter that seems to support your view. Shomrei perot of rin ad savaran b'mayim ve'en choshin, that those who cross the river to protect the fruit, can go through the water up to their necks, and they don't have to be concerned about bathing on Yom Kippur. Rav Yosef shara lahol v'nei beitarbo l'me'avar b'mayim. Rav Yosef permitted people of the village of Beit Tarbo to go through the water. Why? To come to hear the lesson. L'mezal lo shra'a laho. But on the other hand, he didn't permit them to leave, to go back home. Amar le Abaye, im kein atam machshilan la'atid lavo. If that's the case, you're going to prevent them from coming, because they're not going to want to come if they can't go back. Ikeda Amre, and there are those who say, Shira laho lamete, he permitted them to come, Tushra laho lamizo. But what did he do? Okay, he also permitted them to leave. Amar le Abaye, and Abaye said, Bishlam lamete lechaye. To permit them to come, that's understandable, right? That's well. Ela lemezel, but to leave, my tama, what was the reasoning? Kadei shalot tehe machshilan latid lavo, so that you wouldn't cause a delay, obstruction for them to come in the future, right? try to go on. Rav Yehuda v'Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yehuda. Havu kame aguda de nahar. That Rav Yehuda and Rav Shmuel, his son, okay, were standing on the bank, one side of the Papa River. Amavra de Chatstad. Okay, it was on where the crossing of the river was. V'havakai Rame bar Papa mehach gisa. And Rami bar Papa was standing on the other side of the river. Ramale kola, and he shouted out to them, raising his voice. Mahu avad lemete legabaichu lemishal shemata. What about crossing over? Can I cross over the water to come to you to ask a shaila, to learn a halacha? Amarle, and they said to Rav, Papa said to him, Rav Shmuel da Amre Travayu. Both Rav and Shmuel said the following: Over, ubilvad shelo yotzi yado mitachat chefet chaluko. You can cross over, but so long as you don't lift your arms above the hem of the cloak, of the coat that you're wearing. Ika da Amre, and there are those who say, Amar le Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yehuda. That it was Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda who had answered him. Tanena, okay, which some say, we learn, over, that you can cross. Ubilvad shelo yotzi yado mitachat chefet chaluko. So long as you don't lift your hands, okay, and remove your arms from under the hem of your cloak. Now, Matkif la Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef challenged this with the following: Uvachol ki hai gavna mishare. Okay, and even on a weekday, okay, you're going to permit somebody to walk that way through the water. Isn't it dangerous? Right? Fear of drowning. Right? Vaktiv. Then is it written? V'yamat elef ba'ama v'yavireni b'mayim me'afsayi. Right? It's written elsewhere that there will be this flow of water that will rise up from the Holy of Holies. Right? It will measure 1,000 cubits, and I was led through the water up to the ankles. Mikan shemutar la'avor ad afsayim. From here we see it's permitted to cross up if the water is up to one's ankles. Rav Yosef continues, V'yamad elef v'yavireni b'mayim mayim b'kayim. Okay, measured the 1,000, and water was up to his knees. Mikan shemutar la'avor ad b'kayim. From here permitted to walk through the water if it's up to one's knees. V'yamad elef v'yavireni meimat nayim. Here again it says measure the water to 1,000 and up to his loins, up to his hips or waist. Mikan shemutar la'avor ad matnayim, permitted up to his waist. Mikan ve'elech v'yamad elef nachal asher lo uchal la'avor. And then from there he measured another 1,000, and at that point it said, river I could not pass through. Amar Abaye, and Abaye says, Shari nachal dirdifu maya. He says that water at that point is different, okay? Because once it's up to plain still water, you could go up to your waist. But if it's flowing water, nachal dirdifu, okay, that water has a current, and that current can push you, and therefore you could be concerned it would carry you to deeper water and drown. Now, again, new piece. Maybe it means you could come across it by swimming. Talmud Loma, Kigau Hamayim Misachu. As a pasuk says in Ezekiel, for the water had swollen into sachu. Mai mesachu, what does it mean? Water that's swollen? Shiyuta. That means water that is shiyuta, could be sailed. Shekain korin l'shaita saicha. Because there are those who call sailing like swimming. Yecho yavi renu baburni katana. Maybe it's possible he could cross it in a small boat, like a rowboat. Talmud Loma, Bal Telech Bo Ani Shaya. says sailing, right? Called cross, no galley. Okay, from again Isaiah. You can't go with something that has oars. Okay, and so therefore, Yachol Yavirenu Beburni Gedola, maybe cross it in a larger boat. Talmud Lomar, Vitzi Adir Lo Yavirenu. Okay, again, my mashma, what then is it telling us? Kedematargem Rav Yosef, as explained by Rav Yosef, Lo Tezobe Bisfinat Sayadin, you cannot cross it in a ship that's a boat, that's a fisherman's boat, or Burni Rabati Lo Tegozina, nor can you cross it in a large ship. Amar Rabbi Yehuda ben Pazi, who says as follows, Af malach hamavet, ein lo reshut la'avor b'tocho. Even, he says, Rabbi Yehuda ben Pazi, even the angel of death doesn't have permission to pass through from one side of the river to the other like that. Kativ hacha, bal telech bo ani shayit. Why? No boat can go with oars, can travel on it. Kativ hatam mishut ba'aretz. And otherwise it's written from going to and fro, from crossing the earth. Let's go over as we finish up, right? Amar Rabbi Pinchas Mishum Rav Huna. The name of Rav Huna Tzipora, from Tzipori. Ma'ayan hayotze mi beit kodshei hakdoshim. This flow of water that would exit from the Holy of Holies. B'tchila domeh lekarnei chagavim. Initially, its width was only that, like antenna of grasshoppers. Kevan shehagia lepetach hechal. Once it got to the opening of the hechal, ne'asa kechut shel shti. Then it became a little wider, like a thread of the warp. But kevan shehagia le'ulam. Once it got to the ulam, ne'asa kechut shel erev. Then it got a little wider, like the foot of the wolf. Okay? In other words, the different size threads on a loom. Shehagia el petach azara, when it got to the opening of the temple precinct, nesek pi pach katan. Then it was wider, like the opening of a small jug. Behind ditznam. And that's why it's taught Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, Mayim, as we go quickly, 78a, Mefarkim atidim lihiot yotzim mitachet miftan habayit, that this water would bubble up from below the temple, right, from below the base of Mikdash. Mikan ve'elech hayam mitgaber ve'oleh ad shemagia lepetach beit David, and it would continue until it reached the opening of the house of David. Kevan de shemagia lepetach beit David, when it reached the house of David, ne'aseh kinachal shoteh. Then it became like a flowing river. Shabo rochatzin zavin v'zavot nidot v'yoldot. That the women and men who were tamei can wash in. Why? Shne'amar v'yom ahu yeh makor niftach lebeit David v'yoshvei Yerushalayim v'chatat u'lenida. From Prophet Zechariah. On that day, the fountain of the house of David opens to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, that will allow them to be purified with sprinkling. And that's where we're going to stop right there. Okay? All right, guys.